Welcome to a tutorial of the Objects branch. So this is our branch of MPStudio where we're working with objects. Nothing really changes in the main setup page. All I'm doing is opening a project. You can see all these different object tabs I have. I have Kira 2 on modular track. I can have any other robot. Also works as well. So we'll go into the rehearse room. You can see I have an object imported here and an object that we've created inside of MPStudio. I'm just going to go to a new tab, and I'm simulating a robot right now. I'm going to create a keyframe. Then we're going to come over to this tab over here called Scenes. So in the scene, we have a scene selector where you can make scenes with different settings. I'll hit New, and we'll call this Demo Scene. With this, you have a floor distance. What this can be used for is if you had the track system on some kind of lift, like a scaffold or something like that, and you want to represent that in the scene, you can lift everything up. I'll show you an example of that, but for now, I'll leave it with nothing. So that means that the normal track is on the normal floor. What that looks like if you were to lift it is in this scene. Once it loads, I'll push it around. You can see that I have the floor lifted as if the track system was on some kind of scaffold, and I've added in a box here. Just made an object box to show that. Those spitting blue boxes you just saw were when objects are loading in. So let's go back to our new tab here. I can name this tab. Okay, so let's import an object. So the first thing we have to do is enable the scene. You can press the E key. That will toggle between enabled and unenabled, or disabled, excuse me. You can create objects in the scene, a box. I can move this over with the transform tool, a sphere, a tortoise, a cylinder, or you can import a 3D object in 3 different formats: GLP, FBX, and GLFB, I think it's called. We'll look at that in a second. Each one of these objects has parameters. You can duplicate it by hitting the delete key or hitting delete on your keyboard. You can duplicate it. You can also, I think it's Command D will duplicate. No. Just the D key alone is duplicate. That will create an exact copy with all the same parameters. You can shift click on 2 objects and group them together. When you have a group, you can move them together. You can ungroup. Or you can lock an object. Once you've locked it, you won't see a transform tool on it. See, like I can't switch between these two. You can then unlock it. Okay. So we'll work with this box right here. We'll move this guy out of the way. So each individual object has their own different parameters. You can see they have positions that change. You can rotate them. And you can scale them. To scale something, you're going to press Y. You can scale individual areas, or you can scale with these boxes on the outside as a whole. You can also change the numbers individually here. Each object that you create within MPStudio has 3 options for appearance. Checkered, you can see it's sort of checkered angle there. If I use this box, it shows up a little better. Checkered. If I press F, I can zoom in on the selected object. You can do solid color, and you can do a wireframe mode. Let's go back to checkered, and you can choose different colors. If I toggle between online and offline models, you'll see those colors become more richly rendered when you're in the regular scene. Make this a solid color. There you go. And there's a whole options here for typing in hex or RGB values. There's no color picker at this point, but there will be one in the future. There are some advanced properties as well, where you have the metalness. If I look at that, not much change on a solid red. Clear coat, reflectiveness. So let's say I have those up, but roughness all the way down. It gets more of this sort of transparent looking feel to it. Really, you can see the metallic shininess happen. If I turn the roughness all the way up, it will smooth that out a bunch. And you can play with these. Now, if I turn the opacity down, you get almost a see-through box, where you can see through to other objects. I've done this before with a sphere, which you may have seen in other videos, where I had all the way up here, all the way up here, all the way down there. And then it looks more like a glass ball, reflective ball. If I click on this again, press F, you can center it. So you can see then you have a reflective ball. Turn the opacity down, get more of a see-through object. And you can move the camera through this as well and have objects on the inside if you want to do something like a matrix type reveal. You can see our shadows also show up in the real world. Our objects create shadows on the floor. They also can block the light, so you'll see shadows on different characters when I show you that later. So for each individual object, they have different parameters. I turn the roughness back up for now so we can see, and I'll turn the opacity back up as well. So we can cut these objects on the vertical lengths and the horizontal lengths. Let's turn this one back up. So you can have these half moon type objects. You can change how many segments they have. This will smooth out this circle. So you turn it nice and smooth there. If I turn down the segments, you can see how it manipulates the shape of the object. You can do the same for other objects in here as well, the cylinder. If I select this, it has one extra parameter to open up the cylinder ends. You can also make a cone. Change the length here. So open up the sides of the cylinder. Change the amount of segments. The radius top will make more like a cone. And the same amount of advanced properties for all of our objects. This one has radial segments, the radius of the tube, the radius of the object, the arc length, you can move them like that. Tube segments will change the shape. Radial segments also change the shape. A lot of cool things you can do with these objects in here. You've seen Brian combine them all together to make a pool table. You know, I've used this box that we had earlier. If you just want to shape one of it, you can extend out its shape. You want to do another one, you can make it really big. So you can change all these and make them backgrounds or floors or anything like that. So I'm going to delete some of these. Excuse me. Sorry about that, guys. Press the wrong button. It looks like once I've locked this box, I have to go in here and select it in the scene props to actually delete it. When we create objects, T for transform, they do show up here. And you can, rename them if you want. Now let's import an object. My downloads here. We'll just import something like a scene here. So GLTF is a really nice supported format. You'll have a blue spinning box if it's working. You'll have a pulsating box if it doesn't work. So you'll see here, it just came in as scene. You can rename that. It also came in quite large. When you import models, there's 3 or 4 different settings you can change them to. So right now it came in on the meter scale, and you can tell it's quite large. So if I switch it to the millimeter scale, you can see it got really small. So if I scale this up to 100, 100, 100, now you can see it looks a little more to scale compared to our camera here. So you can change the scales around. Some of this is still in beta, so it's not perfect, but when you import a model, you'll definitely have to play with the scale. It may show up blank, which means it's too huge or too small to see. If it just looks like it didn't import at all, like you can't find the model. So you just change the scale around and work with the scale tool to find out. You can also still use the scale tool to work with your models. Once you've created a model, you can still create a target in the scene. And then when you select your model, you can match target. That will put the model in exactly the center, based on where the center point is on the model. So if you have a model you got from online, the center point's on the bottom of the foot or something, it will match the target there. So if you have the opportunity to edit your own models, make your center in the center of the model. This one happened to work out. But that's a really cool feature, this match target feature. So wherever the target is, the model will match to it. So if you want to really quickly get in the real world, you set up a real target, then you want to jump your model to it, just hit match target. Once that's done, let's say you're moving in here and you go to target, then you see there your camera will look at it. You go to pane 2 up, and then camera, you can see here that you're looking at it. And if I made another move here, you have to be out of the editor in order to move the camera. So in the editor, the tools are going to go to the edited object tools. Outside of the edit scene, they'll go to the camera tools. So if I now go through, it's going to lock to the target that's on the object. And you could still use the focus offset on this to put the focus in the front, which you can see on my Yoda scene over here. I have the focus offset changes. You can close some of these other windows to get some more space in here. But let's say we generate and play through. You can see my focus offset has moved a little bit. Keeps it on the front of Yoda. Okay, go back to our demo. You see as you switch rooms, the object has to load up again sometimes, because it doesn't store always in memory yet. We'll look into that in future builds. But these objects can be quite large sometimes. There is a limit to FBX size. I don't know exactly what they are yet, but some FBX won't load if they're too large. So we do recommend the GLB or the GLFB type objects the best. They work primo, but you can also import some FBX objects. So once an object is imported, if we toggle this back on, you can name it and it shows up in this prop list. You can still do the lock, unlock, duplicate type things. You can do the match target. and you have a path file. So let's say you move that object for project management, you can re-find it by updating the path here. You don't have any custom color controls, and we don't have any controls of the textures, but you do have all this control. So right now Yoda is sort of floating. So let's say we wanted to move this box. I can match target as well, and then just put it right underneath Yoda. Press F, and that zooms in on the object. So then we have Yoda on a pedestal. You can change the size of this, right? Say we wanted to touch the ground there. Another cool thing is that the camera, if it was to collide with an object, will show up red. So we have collision detection for objects as well. That would include the box or any made objects and any imported objects. So that's really the main features that we find here. You can switch, as you could see here, the demo scene is here. If I switch to another scene, a different scene will come in, and those scenes can have different properties, right? You can have the lifted room up. So each tab can have its own scene. In this one, I have two shoe props on top of each other, exactly on top of each other, two different shoes. So you can see them. They look like there's two different shoes here. And I have this whole scene is grouped together. So when I grab it, you'll see that it's one big group. If I wanted to move it over, it'll be one big group. And I've made this floating column, and I've made a shoe, and we have a nice little orbit around it. It's really cool. So the next thing I want to show you is the measure tool. If you hold Option and click, it will measure from the ground. Here, I'll go to 1-up for a moment. Change the perspective. It will measure from the ground to the object, wherever you clicked. If you hit Option, click again, you can then make another line to, like, let's say the front of the camera. If you just hold down Option, you have a transform tool so you can drag these things around. Let's say I actually needed it to go to this plate here. And then you'll see 1 foot, 6.4 inches. That can also be switched to meters if you go into the tools and just switch your whole room to imperial versus metric. And then that also gives you another measurement by default when you make the second one. And if you wanted to change that again, let's say you needed to measure the object itself, you just hold it again, make a new click, and a new click. And now you can see that these shoes are 11.6 inches long. So if you wanted to compare that to your real shoe in real life to make sure the scale was right, that's what I did in the iMac demo I posted the other day, was to make sure the scale was right. I'll switch over to this iPhone one I have. So this iPhone one I put in this green screen world just by using some of our objects, making them green. You can see I have quite a lot of objects in here. And in here I have a couple iPhones. I've also messed around with some of these objects, as you can see, made the colored ones inside of them. So I got the stats of a real iPhone and made it into a box here, and then imported my iPhone model and tried to match those. Obviously the rounding is not there, so that's how I was able to make sure the model matched, was making a box looking at the iPhone stats on the website, copying that, and changing some of the box parameters, the scale to match in millimeters. And then I got an actual iPhone. You could see the scale of the model that I found for free was way off. So I just kind of matched it on top of each other to make sure that that was gonna, match as close as I could. And then of course you can just hit D and duplicate your phones as many as you want, have them in the scene where you can, look around them. And then for this particular scene, I made a really big green screen room and made some corners. I have it inside of a cylinder so I can kind of mock up what a green screen shoot would look like. Cool. Those are pretty much all the features: measurement tool, import tool, objects, what you can do with them, the object lists. You can click on these and it will select different objects in the room. You can see the cylinder is our big backdrop. You can save scenes and have them per tab, different scenes with different properties. You can lift the floor up or lower the floor like we did in this one. It will lift the robot base up and you can have it floating to a certain degree if you need to, match that you're going to put it up on a scaffold or something. And that can be per tab as well. All right, guys, that's the object branch. Sorry for a long video, but it's a really, really awesome, powerful branch.